the timer on screen, ready to go into warm-up session. And the boys know it's happening because they're putting out the garage and lining up. And as you said, Matt, this is now the chance to... Now, that was an intermediate tyre.
I was just going to say.
That was an intermediate tyre on that McLaren.
Is that an anticipation of wet weather? Or
well, you wouldn't normally run that in dry conditions unless he just wants to take the edge off there. I wonder if he just wants to take the top edge off the intermediate to then come in.
Yeah, he's just doing the one lap on them.
That's what it is then. He just wants to put a small scrub on those intermediates and then store them so that they've got that as an opportunity. Sometimes when these tyres are brand new, there's a bit too much of a coating on them. There's no profile on the tyre to dig in and grip into the circuit as quickly as you might want it to. Jensen out of his race car. I wonder why he's doing that.
One team that suffered yesterday with problems, Sauber. Peter Windsor can fill us in a little more on what went wrong there.
Yes, we saw yesterday a problem on Felipe Massa's car. It looked like there was some sort of suspension problem. Actually, what happened is that they have a carbon plate inside the rim, which improves cooling and also reduces drag in that area of the suspension. And that carbon somehow managed to touch the rim, overheated the rim deformed, and the air came out of the tyre. So quite an unusual problem there. And needless to say, of course, they've modified those carbon plates for the race today. Talking about Jenson Button and Benetton and Jarlo Trulli, or should I say Renault, I was talking to Jarno this morning, and he said that they found something on his car yesterday which came under the heading of finger trouble in the setup, and he wished in retrospect that he'd had a run in the spare car yesterday, because it was the spare car that Jensen set his time in, because he had an oil leak problem in his race car. So Jarno a lot more optimistic today that they've cured that problem, so it will be interesting to see how he goes this morning.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Peter. I guess Jensen's going to really hope that it wasn't just trouble in Jarno's car that helped him out qualifying, because there's nothing like a bit of confidence, Peter, is there? That'll be a massive confidence boost for Jensen to out-qualify Jarno, and I guess he'll be hoping he's done it purely on merit.
Yes, that's right, although I don't think Jensen's under any illusions. Jarno Trulli is a very quick driver, as indeed Jensen is, and I think both of them feel they're going to get out-qualified by one another during the season in the course of the events, just as Ralph and Juan Pablo play the game. So Jensen's got a very cool head these days, and I think he knows how quick Jarno is. But it's great, yeah, he's got lots of confidence at the moment.
Peter, we've got about 6 cars on track at the moment, but can I just ask you, we saw one of the McLarens going out just now with what looked like intermediate tyres on for a lap just to scrub them off, and it looks as if one of the Saubers have done exactly the same. Have you seen any of the other cars doing that?
Yeah, I didn't see it too well, but I think Michael did as well. In fact, Michael's done this several times over the last couple of years, and there is a little bit of an element of scrubbing those cars in, but it's also mainly that you're doing an installation lap. Why use a good set of race tyres even on an installation lap? They're in very short supply, and if you're just going to go out and go in and out, just use a set of intermediates.
We've got Michael Schumacher now, and going out in the spare car. Unless the first one he used was the spare, and now he's getting into his own race car. Just making sure that they're operational should that eventuality arise. Oh, that's now...
Is that legal?
Now, I'm not sure how that's going to work, actually, because that did look like part of his tyre went over that line. I'll be interested to get Peter's reaction on that, actually.
In the race, that would be a stop-go, wouldn't it?
With those tyres coming over the line like that, at that point, it would be at the race director's discretion, or the clerk of the course's discretion, to impose a penalty should they feel it contravened the regulations. But you would have to say that those wheels did cross the line. Now, I'm not sure what action could be taken here, but as I say, it is down to the discretion of both the clerk of the course and race director being Charlie Whiting, FIA delegate. In the meantime, we're back with the Williams garage, and that's Patrick Head, the technical director of Williams, looking in at his young charge.
There was an incredible shot of Patrick Head with one of his colleagues when Schumacher's car crashed 2 weeks ago, and his colleague had his head in his hands and was looking aghast. And Patrick Head turned immediately and started barking orders to the team. And that's fairly cool in a crisis like that.
It's been around a long time. He's seen it before. He's had some of the world's best drivers with him for many, many years, and he just gets on with it. And believe me, when Patrick barks, he does bark. I don't think that guy needs an intercom.
Time lapse.
There's no hanging around in this session, is there?
So we've just got a bit of pit radio there with the Williams. We're going to tune back into that. That doesn't look so... Sorry, Matt.
I was just saying that, as opposed to qualifying where they stalk and wait and bide their time, here everybody seems to be moving all at once.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to hide anymore, really. They've got to go out and just make sure that the car's right. They're not trying to sandbag like in any of the other sessions 1 and 2 or 3 or 4. Obviously, qualifying is a flat-out situation, and they've got to go and get that time. But here, it's just a question of getting some information together. What is they've got to match the car to the current environment. So whatever the weather conditions are at the moment, whatever the track surface is like, they need to make that car work on this track with full fuel loads as well as possible, and full fuel loads compared to what they run in qualifying makes that car an awful lot heavier. So it's going to react differently under braking, it's going to react differently in corners and also under acceleration. And they need to find out what is the best possible solution for that car, whether it be an aerodynamic change or whether it be geometry change such as springs. I doubt if they'd really go into a lot more than that. Ride heights. Raikkonen looks like he's limping a little bit there.
He wears one, Coulthard wears two. What are those knee pads about?
Well, those knee pads, you take quite a bashing in racing. I mean, racing cars are hostile environments for racing drivers. You do get knocked around in them, and you could, because the construction is carbon fibre. I mean, carbon fibre is just like rock. So if your legs are getting knocked into the side all the time, especially if you've got a bulkhead area just by your knees, that can actually damage your leg. In fact, I actually had that. I lost all use of my right foot for over 3 months because it damaged the nerve in my leg, just hitting it against the bulkhead of the car. We're just getting snatches of radio from the Williams team here, but that's why they wear those, because they can avoid bruising, avoid possible damage. But that's not the only thing that's going to be hurting them here, because the heat and the humidity is massive and it just drains you.
Dave Richards was quoted yesterday after qualifying as saying that the fitness of our drivers is key to our performance in the race.
The fuel 4, please. Fuel 4.
Fuel 4. Okay, he's probably telling him to go onto a particular fuel map.
Fuel position 4.
I don't know when to interrupt.
What happens is you speak and then they speak.
Yeah, I don't know when to interrupt this. I'll quit as soon as they speak again. Fuel position 4 is a manual switch that Juan will have in that car to decide how much fuel the engine's getting. So there are different maps that are available to him for fuel consumption and also for engine performance. So that's what they'll just be playing around with that at the moment. And they'll want to record this kind of information on the consumption in these conditions, and that might affect what pit stop strategy they go for. So that might be something quite separate to the tyres.
Well, a little earlier we saw a Ferrari possibly overstepping the line on the exit from the pits. Peter Windsor has the latest on that.
Yes, well spotted, guys. The news from the stewards here is that, yes, it was an infringement, but it's not going to be investigated any further because there was a queue of traffic there, so no action being taken.
Nothing to do with who was in the car, I suppose.
I knew you'd say that. I'm not the right person to ask that question of.
All right, thanks, Peter.
Well, I'm pleased no action's being taken because it's a good rule, but you know it was very, very early on and there was nobody coming anyway, so it's not really part of it. But it just shows you, doesn't it, that if they had decided they could do something, they could do, because it was an infringement. But they've just been fairly sensible about it. So Dave Coulthard there in the McLaren, wondering two things: A, can he go ahead and beat his new young signing, Kimi Räikkönen, new young teammate? And then B, can he take the Ferraris?
McLaren's barge boards. Explain what is different from last year's model.
So this is all part of the thrills of a modern-day Grand Prix car, and it's a constantly evolving process. What you've got with this new turning vane and the new shape suspension pickup is better airflow to the bottom of the car, and the bottom of the car is responsible for so much of the ground effect downforce of the modern Grand Prix car. So the clean airflow that comes from the front of the car is imperative, and they'll do anything to shape and reform and redirect that air to get better performance from it. And it's a constantly evolving process. On board with Dave Coulthard.
Just a reminder that this is what you get with our interactive coverage. Just hop around with that red button. On track A, David Coulthard. Track B, Rubens Barrichello. You can go on board with Coulthard with our onboard feed, and we're in the pits with the Renault cam.
Oh, that's what nearly 300 kilometres an hour looks like. In fact, in qualifying yesterday, David was seeing 304.3 kilometres an hour at this point now. So 40.785, and that compares with a 36.4 from qualifying, so just over 4 seconds starting yesterday at the moment.
Michael wasn't too polite about Coulthard.
Never is.
Prior to the season. He says he hasn't got a couple of tenths left in him.
Oh, there's his brother. He wants to have a chat with him. We've got a yellow flag situation now. Yellows are off. One kept the engine running. Pardon me, Ralph kept the engine running, got it spun round quickly. Let's see where this went wrong. Roy's losing the back already there. Got the opposite lock on, but the inertia and the momentum from the rear of the cars brought it round. He knew it was happening, dipped the clutch, spun it round, and shot on his way again. There we go from inside the car. Nothing coming, so he knows he's okay, but you've got to make it quick, and you don't want to be dropping the clutch and trying one of those half donut spins if you stall, because then A, you feel like a complete idiot, and B, you're blocking the track.
People like yourself are forever saying he's kept it running as though that's a major achievement. Is it a major achievement?
It can be a little bit sometimes, because if the car's going sideways, you might be concentrating on trying to correct it and trying to power out of it. But if you lift the throttle too quickly and you don't dip the clutch, or even the hand clutch, the hand-operated clutches, which actually I've never used, so I'm not desperately familiar with that. But then you'll lose the engine, and then that's it. There's no onboard starter. Felipe Massa currently second fastest in this warm-up session. Had a bit of a disaster yesterday in qualifying. He'd been quicker than his teammate Heidfeld for just about all the sessions, and then when it came to qualifying, lost the car into the kitty litter, had to run back, get another one, and unfortunately for him anyway, the T car was set up for Nick Heidfeld, and he didn't quite get to grips with it, hence his qualifying position. But I think Massa's going to be a real star in the future.
I wonder if he went water skiing this weekend.
Why did you say that?
Because before the last one he did, and I said to him, do you think it was wise to, what did your boss say, if you went water skiing just before your first ever Grand Prix for this team? And he said, well, it's because my boss arrived one day before the race and I went water skiing 2 days before the race.
Yeah, it's a clever move. He's learning about F1 already. Well, we've got all drivers out on the circuit at the moment, so nobody's sitting it out. Michael Schumacher's just set the overall fastest second sector time in this session at least. And waiting to see what Jenson Button can do. He hasn't set a representative lap yet. But it will be interesting to see what progress Renault have made, because, you know, the acid test will be in the race for them. I was asking Jenson yesterday if they still expected the Renault to have the same kind of starting ability that the Benetton possessed last year, because last year, even though the Benetton was a complete dog, they were able to start very, very quickly indeed. So now, being more toward the front end, Jenson might be getting slightly excited that he could clear a row, especially considering there's quite a straight before the first corner. Rubens Barrichello just set fastest first sector time, but Michael Schumacher, as we would expect, has gone to the top of the leaderboard, 139.981. About 4.6, 4.7 seconds slower than his qualifying time. And Nicky Heidfeld now. A lot of similarities with the Ferrari engine, Bridgestone tyres, but different driver and chassis. And it's showing up as well. That's a good time from Nicky Heidfeld. At 1 minute 40.184 has just put him into second place behind Michael Schumacher. I mean, this is really, it's for the team's benefit to find out where they are and where they stand. But if Heidfeld can keep that relative placing on Schumacher, then he's going to be looking very, very good indeed for the race.
A lot of traffic out there at the moment, just the one car in the pits.
Just Jacques Villeneuve in the pits at the moment, asking for a complete redesign, new aero package and possibly improved engine performance. Should be out sometime within the next 14 months.
Now then, it says there, Ferrari knows. What's different about this one?
Again, with the front wings, they've got, you know, the major function of the front wing is to create a lot of low pressure below it. If think of the way an airplane wing works. An airplane wing will go along, develop lift over the top of it, which is what pulls it up. A wing in motor racing will do exactly the opposite. It will develop low pressure underneath it, which of course then pushes the car down. Now, this has got two things to do. It creates downforce at the front of the car, which is critical, but all this profiling you see where the arrow is at the moment is meant to try and clean the air again, the same as we saw with the barge boards, underneath the floor of the race car, where there's an awful lot of benefit to be had aerodynamically. So they've got a couple of jobs to get through there. And this is why these guys spend hours and hours and hundreds of thousands of pounds, possibly into millions, in wind tunnels, just finding out exactly what works. And one thing can't just work on its own. All these areas, aerodynamic areas, have to work together. So they have to find a complete solution for the flow of air over the top of the car, around the side of the car, even from the wheels, and of course under the car. Jenson Button. Nice and tidy. That was in turn one for Jenson now.
Okay, through sector 2 now, I think. Back, looking good. Come to the engine rack, please.
You're doing 200 miles an hour and you're having a chat.
Yeah, but you pick your moments. You wouldn't really want to be doing that when you're suffering 3.5G.
Sorry, it's not so bad. I would say the biggest problem is a bit too much roll in the rear.
He's complaining about the rear end of the car.
The comment again, when in the pit lane, I didn't quite copy it.
It's on the steer and slow speed, that is good. He tries to snap sometimes in the brake with the rear a little bit. Brake balance is 53.0, so locking front's quite easy to start with. So I think that's a good balance to start with, and then I can go forward as the run goes on. when you lean on the rear, it's good. And as soon as I change direction, then the car jumps from side to side. It's not strong enough to hold the car with the fuel. Yeah, it just, as soon as you go from one side to the other, it just rolls. So you got, when you change direction with high fuel, you got to be quite careful. So I don't know, we have to have a good think about it. Maybe we want to go step stiffer in the rear springs.
He's talking about going stiffer on the rear springs, so he must be experiencing a little bit of movement on the back of the car. It was difficult to hear everything he was saying. I heard him talking about understeer in the slow corners, so the understeer will be, he's turning the corner, he wants to go at a certain angle through that corner, but the front will just keep going on a little bit. But as he said, it's no big problem, he'll just back out of it, back out of the throttle a little bit to just take it slightly slower. Brake balance, he was talking about. Brakes here are going to be important, of course. We've seen how late they brake for at the end of these very long straights. And in qualifying, we saw great big plumes of carbon fibre dust coming from the cars. Some of that was caused because they were using what they've termed as qualifying brake ducts, which aren't as exposed as, let's say, the race brake ducts. Therefore, that they're not causing as much drag, but they will cause more heat and more wear on the pads. But they'll be going back to standard standard ducts for the race itself. But the rear, from what I could make out, he was saying, is that with the full tank of fuel on board, the car is heavier, and when he's making these quick turns, the back doesn't really want to respond quite as well, and that's, he feels the solution may be to go stiffer on springs. But it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can do that, because we've got 8.5 minutes of the session left, and if they can go back out with his stiffer springs to see what change it does make. A, if he can go faster, and B, if he reports it just feels an awful lot better.
Peter Winter has been listening to you and would like to offer this contribution.
Yes, just adding to that Montoya-Williams situation, the impression I got there, Perry, was that Montoya's on a lighter fuel load than Ralph, and he was saying that in the change of direction at the moment he can handle it, but if he had more fuel, it was in Ralph's situation, it would be a bigger problem. And interesting to see, Ralph has been doing most of his laps in the spare car. He's just got into the race car. No problem with the race car. BMW, of course, want to limit the amount of mileage he does on that fresh race engine.
Thanks for that, Peter. That makes sense now. I couldn't quite hear what he was saying here.
Let's concentrate on Trulli, who appears to be doing this for real.
Well, I mean, he was obviously trying yesterday, but it was a bit cryptic of the fault he feels that they found in his car, which stopped him from qualifying where he would have wanted to, which primarily would have been above his teammate Jenson Button. But we'll get a better idea of where he stands in relation to Button and vice versa after this warm-up session. I mean, they've got to think about each other, but they've got to think about the race and getting this through. And it must be quite exciting for Renault now, because they've made, they've been on this resurgence path for a while. As Benetton last year, they got a lot stronger toward the end of the year, and now, of course, rebranded as Renault.
We heard Montoya asking for adjustments. Are they likely to be made in time for him to go out and test them in, 6 and a bit minutes remaining?
Well, it'd be nice to think so, because you'd want to see if you were right on it. If you've got the opportunity to do that and then go out and run, then that's what you'd want to do. But I'm not sure that that will be done, because if I was him or Ralph, I'd want to be sitting in the car while it was done. There's a number of ways you can go stiffer on the back. You can, increase the roll bar settings or increase the preload on the springs without changing the springs, but then of course you can change the springs. So they've got a number of solutions open to them.
It's not fast enough in a straight line, that's what Jacques was saying yesterday about his car.
Or under braking, acceleration, or in the corners.
Else.
But apart from that, it's a great package. No, I mean, Dave Richards is now with the team, and he knows that this BAR team needs sorting out, and there's going to be some technical personnel changes, etc. No doubt, because the man is very successful. He's used to winning in rallying. He has managed the Benetton team before, and now he's come into BAR to replace Craig Pollock. He's going to want to get it right.
Peter Windsor.
Yeah, just talking about Jack and that comment I made earlier about this guy that was looking at all the Sector 2 times and how they actually reflected the grid. Jack was actually very quick in Sector 2 yesterday on the fast corners. And talking to the Williams guys, it looks as if they added some wing halfway through qualifying to pick up speed through there, and it actually improved their lap time. So one has to assume that Jack was actually probably carrying more wing than he would have wanted to have done for the whole lap. But he was quick through that Sector 2, so interesting to see what BAR will do today to try and get the compromise right.
Well, he was actually 8th fastest through Sector 2 in qualifying yesterday, Peter, but going through the speed trap, he was actually only 18th fastest, just around 7.6 kilometres down, actually on Michael Schumacher and Montoya.
Exactly, yeah, so running much too much wing, obviously, to get the best lap time, but very quick in that one sector.
Jarno Trulli actually very quick indeed, 1 minute 39.791, and that puts him to the top of this scoreboard anyway. But no, just been eclipsed by the German maestro Michael Schumacher, who's put Trulli back in second. But be interested to know if, I can't really see any point of Trulli not running with the correct amount of fuel.
Okay.
As we look at Michael, Jenson Button is reacting to his teammates' previous laps.
Yeah, he's just set his own personal best in the first sector, and so has Michael Schumacher. But Jenson Button currently lying 11th fastest in the warm-up time, but he's just set his own personal best in Sector 2, so Jenson will certainly be improving on this lap, but we've yet to see where. Barrichello out the pits now as Salo comes into the pits, and Eddie Irvine out of the pits. So with the exception of Webber, Salo, Panis, Trulli, Montoya, Räikkönen and Coulthard, everybody else is currently out on the circuit. So Massa, what do you think of him then? Because he's putting in some quick times now. First sector fastest, his personal fastest time, and same with the second sector. I think, he's a revelation, this kid. I'm going to really be interested to watch him a lot more.
But weren't you saying that the young drivers nowadays don't have it as tough as when you were around?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's ancient history with me, but there's a lot of things that can help a young driver in Grand Prix now. Traction control, and also the paddle shifts, and automated down change, and the power steering. I mean, we know, as an example, Alan McNish is a real small lad, and when he was much younger, testing for McLaren, you had to worry about him in the high-speed corners because he looked frail. These cars were really loading up, and I'm sure that he found it difficult to hang on to the cars back then. But nowadays, I mean, Alan himself has developed a lot more upper body strength after years of sports car racing. He's a great driver, but it's a lot easier physically now because of this power steering. I mean, you remember somebody as strong as Nigel Mansell. Now, Nigel Mansell was you shake hands with that guy, and believe me, you have to go to hospital for 3 days afterwards getting your fingers strapped up. And he used to get out of a car exhausted sometimes. They were tougher to drive. Ralf Schumacher's just set the overall fastest first sector.
Montoya, I'm told, is going out in the spare to save his race engine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Highfield's going quickly. He set the overall fastest middle sector, and he's still up there in 3rd position on this scoreboard anyway. And there's only 1 minute to go. So that's a nice time for Highfield. For his sake, I hope he's carrying a full tank of fuel, because if he is, he's looking like a great outside bet for this race. But it's interesting that in full tank trim, in race trim, he's closed the gap to Michael Schumacher, who has set the fastest time, to 0.2 of a second, whereas in qualifying he was more like 2 seconds away. Rubens Barrichello now.
Yes, start.
Rubens is actually on a fairly quick lap. He set his own personal fastest time in first sector and second sector. And he didn't do a bad job there at all, because that's actually taken him to becoming top spot in warm-up. But we've yet to see Michael Schumacher complete the lap he's on. Ralf Schumacher yet to complete the lap, and also Felipe Massa. But I suspect that Michael Schumacher may be pulling in at the end of this. Yeah, I think he will be. Ralf Schumacher's gone into the pits now. But Dave Coulthard, I mean, you know, he's set his fastest 2 sector times so far. Let's see what he crosses here with. Well, that's better for David. Third fastest for Dave Coulthard. Left it right to the very end to set his 3 personal best sector times. So nice timing for Dave Coulthard, and let's hope that helps him for the race. 1 minute 39.753 for Dave Coulthard, and that's well, that's less than 0.1 of a second away from Rubens Barrichello. Session is now officially ended. Red lights are on.
Right, let's cross to the Williams pit now and join Peter.
Well, shades of the Australian Grand Prix with Juan Pablo Montoya, except on this occasion it was Ralf, perhaps coming in a bit too quickly in his race car for a practice pit stop there, and a bit of a fire from the brake ducts, but no, nothing untoward really. The mechanics all dived for the fire extinguishers, but it's all been solved now.
Peter, were they using, I take it they were using their race brake ducts today. Did they choose to use their qualifying brake ducts yesterday?
Yeah, that's right, but it's still critical of the pace at which you come in here, and Ralf came in and did a proper race pit stop here, and as they backed the car in, smoke started pouring from the front brakes.
So, Peter, considering that these cars will have to come in, of course, during the race for a pit stop, what does Patrick or any of the other technical boys on the team think what's the ideal time to get these cars back out?
You need to call those brakes.
Sorry, Perry, I missed the back end of your question. What does Patrick think?
Sorry, Peter. Juan's just been told to call the brakes, obviously because of what's just happened to Ralf there. But
with his brakes, so just need to be careful.
Yeah, Montoya's just being informed what's happened to Ralf. But how long can these cars stay stationary before they expect a fire problem with the brakes?
Well, not very long, it appears. I mean, Ralf didn't even do a practice start here. He just came to a halt, they pushed him back, and within about 15 seconds they were away.
Right.
But it's interesting to see both Williams drivers actually did their time in their race cars, and it looks as if the spare car was the one carrying the fuel, and that was the one that Ralf, of course, started the session with.
Thank you, Peter. So, Matt, it's a good idea not to stay still for longer than about 15-20 seconds in these cars then, otherwise you're going to have brake fire.
But we've only seen it happen in the last race and so far in this one.
That's right.
Williams.
Yeah, that's right. But I think it's got something to do with this, the new aero treatment they're using for the brakes. They're sealing up the brake area for aerodynamic reasons, and that's producing a lot more temperatures in the centre of the wheel. So that might be okay while the car's going forward, because the way they've fanned it is that the very hot air can come out the centre of the wheel, and they've had to upgrade the bearings and even the grease and everything to withstand massive temperatures.
Just looking at those capital letters there, B's and M's.
Yeah.
M's were supposed to have the advantage here, weren't they? Or that's what they were saying in Australia.
Well, they were saying it in Australia, but first of all, the track temperatures have been lower than they expected. But secondly, if we looked at the gap from Australia of the Bridgestone/Michelin performance, we've seen that the Michelins really need some kind of track temperature to work to their optimum level, because they have certainly closed the gap to where they were in Australia. Maybe they needed a bit more track temperature to actually surpass the Bridgestones, but obviously there are other factors to consider, such as chassis, engine and driver. But you know, a lot of it is down to the tyres, as we all very well know.
The Michelin spokesman was optimistic that the authorities might be lenient when they spot that people are coming back with completely slick tyres.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to base a multi-million-pound race strategy on like optimism. It's something that I can't really comment on, because it's a call made there and then. I mean, there's provisions in the sporting regulations to say, look, you know, we're going to take a view on this and see how it goes. It's a bit of a grey area. That's all I can say.
All right, let's look back on the highlights of the
Stops.